Welcome back to Gridiron Icon. I am very excited this week to have a very special guest, somebody I've been chasing for a little while that I met online who does some wonderful stuff in the world of football and business. I am with Jennifer Garrett, who also, thank you for your service, is an Army lawyer, leadership coach, high performance expert, entrepreneur, brand architect, corporate trainer, and author and host of Move the Ball podcast. But I very much saved her most important title for last, which is mom. So, Jennifer, welcome to Gridiron Icon.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat today.
It's great to meet you. I'm excited to talk to you. I came upon Jennifer for the audience online, which we live in such an interesting world. I've heard you comment on it as well, that we have such unique opportunities to meet great people in this era. And I met Jen online just through Twittering and other fun stuff, mutual interests. And to finally connect with you is fantastic, because when I looked at your philosophy and just some of your thoughts on business, branding, and how you incorporated football, I was like, this is fantastic. I've been using similar analogies and principles throughout my entire career in sales, leading sales teams, both nationally and regionally. And when I first looked at Move the Ball, her fantastic book, it reminded me of a great quote from Steve Young. And maybe you've seen this, Jen, this interview he does for NFL Films, where he literally says, football is the greatest metaphor for life. Mm-hmm. And that so resonated with me, as did your book, Move the Ball, which I'm just about done with, folks. And it's really, really good. So excited to have you. And I want to start out by asking you, who is your favorite team?
My favorite team is the Chicago Bears, pro team Chicago Bears. College is Alabama.
That's right. You are an Alabama girl. That's right.
I am.
I'll tell you what, there has been a lot to cheer about if you're an Alabama fan for the last decade or so.
Yes.
Under Nick Saban. But a Chicago Bears fan, I just want to start this out at the time of this recording on Tuesday morning. I want to apologize for Sunday night, but as a diehard Rams fan, I thoroughly enjoyed Matt Stafford's debut. But there's a lot of ex-Rams on that Chicago Bears, particularly on defense. So
yes,
that was fun. That was fun to see. And you love one of the iconic teams in the NFL, a team I followed for most of my life. Love it.
Yeah, the Bears are a great team. And if I can just share a quick funny story about the Rams and the Bears game. I have a daughter that's about to turn 19. She got into fantasy football because her boyfriend and his family does fantasy football. So she knows nothing about football, or very little. So she calls me up, asks me, who she should draft. And so we talk about that. She drafts her team, goes into this weekend. She's winning before Sunday night. And then her boyfriend has Matt Stafford as a quarterback. And so, of course, after that game, she was not winning. However, Monday's game, she had Josh Jacobs was her last player that could earn points. And so he ended up Alabama guy. He ended up, getting her the points. So she did win, but Sunday night was not a fun night for her, because she thought she had it in the bag. And then obviously the Bears defense did not do what they were supposed to do. Matt Stafford and the Rams had a great game. So, there's a little bit more stress than she anticipated. And that's why I don't do fantasy football. I don't have time for that or that stress. No, I don't have time. It's helping her, but I'm like, okay, now you're going to be on your own. I've helped you.
I love that story. The similar story. I had Matt Stafford Sunday night. I was losing until he threw that last touchdown the back of the end zone to Robert Woods. So it sounds like your daughter and I were biting our nails a little bit the last night. And then Josh Jacobs last night played through a really could be a serious toe injury, but man, he pulled through for her. So good for her. Fantasy football, but you're not playing. You're not playing, huh?
No, I don't have time for it. I mean, it's great to kind of help her a little bit, so it was fun. But I'm like, I'm spending too much time paying attention. Is Josh Jacobs going to play? Because he was questionable because of that injury. And then she was flying, so I'm texting her updates while she's in the air. And I'm like, I don't know if you're going to get your points because he's not in now. And so I'm glad that because for week 1, she was actually playing her boyfriend. And her boyfriend had asked her, did you ask your mom? to help you with your fantasy team. So there was a little extra like, okay, we got to win this one.
There's a lot of stress in that situation. Good for her and good for the boyfriend. He's got to take it like a man.
Yes.
She pulled it out, and Josh Jacobs is a stud. So I love that story as a fantasy footballer. I can't believe you're not doing it, but I get it. You're pretty busy. You're pretty
Yes.
busy. So, Jen, tell us, how long have you been a football fan, and kind of give us your history. The NFL's really put a push for more female fans in the last 10, 15 years. And I think it's awesome. I really do. We're even seeing women football leagues. So I would love to hear, did you grow up as a young girl and teenager and whatnot being a football fan? What's your history with the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, why football? Because I am pretty intense with it. And I fell in love with the game at 4. I grew up in Chicago. I did not grow up in a football family. I'm an only child. My parents were Chicago Bears fans, but my dad never played, didn't coach, any of that. And so as an only child, you spend a lot of time with your parents. Again, this was the days there was no YouTube or TikTok or social media. So either you were outside playing with your friends, and I didn't really have many friends that lived in my neighborhood, so I hung out with my parents. So on Sundays, I watched Bears football and was just fascinated with, the game is a fast-paced sport, so it's exciting because of that dynamic. But what really intrigued me about the sport was those fourth quarter comebacks. You would see the Bears trailing by 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns in the second half, and somehow, some way, once in a while, they pull off a win. That situation is not unique to the Bears, but that's what I saw as a kid. And so that's really what hooked me. And I started just following football and taking all of these different lessons from the game and then figured out how they applied to real life. And so that's kind of how my football journey began. As you might have seen, I'm pretty, when I talk with guys on my podcast, we get pretty deep sometimes in different games. And I've been a student of the game my entire life.
I can't tell you how much I love that. And you really pick up on it in Move the Ball, both the podcast and your book, that you're a very knowledgeable football fan. And I'll tell you what, as a Chicago Bears fan, you faced some adversity, particularly with quarterbacks over the last 10, 20 years between, Jay Cutler, who I actually like. I think he's an interesting guy and personality, but you've had a lot of adversity in Chicago. So that's fun. And it comes through. It comes through in a lot of the principles you expound on in the book. So speaking of adversity and challenges, I think it's absolutely remarkable. And this is a subject that's really near to my heart because I was raised by a single mom. And I know all the challenges of that and absolutely adore my mother. She's my hero. You are a mom of 5 children, which is absolutely awesome. My mother of 3. So we're playing catch up a little bit, though. We're older now. But that is remarkable, Jen. But I think what really jumped out at me when I met you was that you were able during this time in your life, and it comes through in the footballism, the book, you were able to get 7 college degrees while a single mom. How did you apply that football mentality to that? My mom did, but I don't think she realized it. How did you do that?
Yeah, football, competitive sports, they all teach you to never give up, right? Like you're out there in football on the field, you got to keep pushing through until the game is over. And in the case of football, in life, we don't have 60 minutes, we have more time. But it's really about, that perseverance, that dedication, putting the work into whatever it is your objective is. And I am very stubborn, as my mother will agree to, always been that way. And I've always been one to like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to figure it out. And, just like in football, the team around you matters. And so I would not have been able to get those 7 degrees or even 1 without the support of my family. I had really great parents that helped me watch my kids when I was in class in the evenings. And so, it's really about being committed to whatever it is that you want to do, and then just put that playbook, that plan together and figure out how you're going to get it done. I do think I will have, if I didn't have my parents, I still think I would have been a college graduate, but it might have taken longer, right? So having that support system was helpful for me to be able to accomplish it as quickly as I did as well.
That's fantastic. It always takes a support, which of course directly relates to the game of football, right?
Yes.
There's so many, everybody gets a Super Bowl ring in an organization, the janitor, the secretary, the office admins. It's wonderful because it does take everybody. And as someone, and I might, being transparent myself, I was raised by a single mother. Then I was a single father who got full custody of my son. And without that's why your book resonates so much with me. It's several chapters, because I too applied my football background as a former player who dreamt of going to the NFL. They never called. I don't know why. To a lot of my parenting, and as a single dad. So that's really remarkable accomplishment on your part. Early in your book, you had me right at the dedication. You let your son play football.
I did.
And I love that. Do you recommend football? We know the dangers. We're familiar with it, and it is not playing checkers, folks. It's a physical game. I love your quotes throughout the book about, it's an impact game from some of the greatest coaches ever. But you let your son play. Do you recommend that for the teamwork aspect, the physicality as a mom? I just love that you dedicated it to your son and what you learned from that experience.
Yeah, so I have one son, 4 girls, of my 5 kids.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, just one. But I would say, like, put it this way: if I had another son, or even my littlest daughter, I tease her, I'm like, "You want to play football?" I would have my kids play football. That's a decision that every parent needs to make because of the physicality of the game. I think no matter what, your kids should play competitive sports, team sports. I think it's important because there's so many lessons, whether it's football or basketball or volleyball or some other team sport. There's so many things you can learn. Because I am a football person, if my kids wanted to play football, I would allow them to play the sports. But I just think there's so many lessons. There's so many great things you learn about how to be successful in life from playing sports, football especially, but any competitive sport.
Yeah, that's so well said. I couldn't agree more as a former single parent myself. Have you seen a lot of that translate or mesh, if you will, with your time serving us in the military? I think it's remarkable that you're an Army attorney. I felt like I missed my calling at one point, wanting to be an attorney, but you're doing it at a really different level for something that's incredibly important to our lives as a country. Do you see a lot of that teamwork in the football piece of that mesh?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're looking at whether it's a football context or a military context, it's about people coming together for that common objective. And I talk with a lot of football, NFL players, as you know. I obviously interact with a lot of military folks through my own career. And there's so many commonalities. It starts with the teamwork and that togetherness for whatever that mission is in the military, whatever that goal is on the football field, right? So absolutely, teamwork is present in both of those domains. And in the military, there's a lot of folks that I work with that do use a lot of football metaphors as well to try to get people motivated and keep the team moving and get some momentum behind whatever it is we're trying to do.
I love that you're putting that to work and out there for the rest of us, because some of us may have one of the experiences, but not the other. And certainly it goes without saying, staying away from things like politics and other events. This is a football pod, but we all need to come together, and that teamwork piece is so critical. So kind of sticking there and shifting gears, 2 of the chapters in your book that really resonate with me, and let's be honest, it's more of a personal thing. It's been a fascinating subject for me, and one that I consistently, in many times still have a challenge with or wonder about, and that's that issue of leadership. Chapters 10 and 11, I loved, about recognizing the blitz, which is just so critical. And it may not be the funnest subject. I'm sure a quarterback getting blindsided isn't a fun subject for him, but on a profession, how you lace that or weave that into a corporate environment with just about any kind of career is really interesting to me. I don't think any of us haven't been the victim of a blitz. And the one story that really stood out to me, and I'm assuming you changed names and it's safe to mention here from the book, is your experience at Boeing with Susie in the book.
That is actually her name. Maybe I should have used a different name.
No, I love it.
But that is her name.
I absolutely love it. And I think there were so many reasons that jumped out at me. One, I used to own an event management company, and I can tell you that people always, and it's extremely common, comp rooms for people who are doing a conference and whatnot. And then to just, but equally so, I've experienced that where you've got someone in a leadership position that clearly doesn't have the right motives and is clearly doing something to undermine you, whether it's personal or professional. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how to recognize the blitz? I still, to this day, I've had several experiences much like yours with Susie that blow my mind that a grown adult or someone in a leadership role would act that way.
Sure.
I love that story. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough subject to think about how people really want to see you fail, but it exists. And I think I was earlier in my career, I was younger, mid to late 20s, and I just did not. Thankfully, I hadn't experienced that yet, so I was a little bit naive to think that someone would go to the lengths that she did to try to, deter my career or derail it. But what I learned from that experience was there are people out, and she wasn't the only one. There were others too in that same job that I was working that were not happy that I'd climbed the corporate ladder at such a young age. But so I think it's important for us to realize, as I talk about in the book, I analogize you to being the quarterback on your own life's field. And as a quarterback, you have to understand who's on the field with you, right? On your team, but also, on the other side of the ball, right? Is there people that are looking to blitz you, as we talk about, that are trying to intentionally limit you from making that forward progress? And I think what that experience taught me was be aware of who else is out there, because not everybody is your friend. Not everybody wants you to succeed. And so the first step is understanding who are those people that might be trying to limit that progress, whether that's a competitor from a business standpoint, right? Or it's just people that you work with that you might think are on your side, but they're not necessarily. I mean, I think there's not a lot of people. I'd like to think that it's more the exception than the norm, that there are people out to get you, right? And that don't want you to succeed. But there are people out there because of jealousy or what, they're just not nice people that may be doing things to help prevent you from achieving what it is you're trying to do career-wise, business-wise, or just in life. And so that awareness is so important.
Couldn't agree more. And would you agree, this is more of a viewpoint question, would you agree that you tend to be able to recognize those people fairly early in a relationship? You start to see signs of someone who's coming off the edge on a blindside blitz, and you're going, okay.
Now I do. I'll say that not necessarily from that experience. I think that was one experience, but also to share a little bit more about my personal life. I was in a very drama-filled relationship for a number of years with someone who was true textbook narcissist. People use that term loosely, but this textbook definition. What I learned from that is to be aware and recognize if there are signs that something doesn't feel right or that something's off. Don't ignore those signs. Don't look past those. So now I would say, yes, it's very easy for me to recognize that, but it took me a couple of lessons to really be fully aware of who might be, or just to, be a little bit cautious with certain people.
Yeah, great advice. I've had one of those too. And classic textbook narcissism is, it unfortunately runs a little rampant in our society in recent decades. So good for you for getting free of that. That's a great segue into one of the things you talk about in the book, and it relates to a football world, and maybe we've been on both ends of it, is how to cut the dead weight. Mm-hmm. And how to get those people out of your life. Why do you think it's so important? You mentioned a few minutes ago about teamwork, and I'm kind of leading you into this. I know the answer too, but why do you think it's so important to make sure that your circle, your teammates in football, it's 11 people on both sides of the ball with all kinds of personalities coming together for a common cause? What makes that so important to get rid of the ones who aren't going to move the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it important not only from a can I count on someone to make plays, so to speak, in a business sense or in my career, but also from people that have experiences that you can learn from. You want to have the right people that are going to share the right perspectives, right experiences, and those that don't have those experiences, they may not need to be in your inner circle because you're not learning and growing from them. But secondly, there might be people that are just so toxic, so detrimental, so non-value added that you need to just cut those ties, whether that's a personal relationship or professional or business. You have to be able to cut those ties. Now, some people will say, well, how do you do that when it's family? Right. And so what I would say is, well, you have to kind of put them in a couple different buckets. Ones that are supportive and that can help you, that keep those. Right. Then there's people that might be so toxic that you just have to, even if they're family, you have to have that courage to be like, you know what, this is detrimental for me, for my growth, for my happiness, for my family's well-being. So I just need to cut the tie. That is hard to do, but sometimes you have to. And then there's other family members or people that they're not necessarily toxic, but they don't necessarily understand your vision or your goal or why it is you want to do something. You don't have to completely get rid of them, but you just, as I mentioned in the book, push them to the sideline. Don't let them get in your head. You don't need to tell them everything that you're doing. You can give them updates here and there if you want, but don't have them be in your inner circle, because they're going to just be putting thoughts in your head like, why are you doing this? I don't understand. Right? Or they'll be like, you can't do that. Don't do this because XYZ. And sometimes they're not like blitzers where they're negatively intentioned. They might have great intentions and mean well for you, but they just don't understand what it is you're trying to do, or they're not willing to take those same risks that you might be willing to take. I mean, I'll share a quick example. When I left my Fortune 50 role, my last one, to be a full-time entrepreneur, I completely changed my circle, my inner circle, because I wanted to surround myself with people that were successful entrepreneurs, because they knew how to do it, right? All the people that were corporate folks, they knew how to succeed in big corporate. It's a very different mindset. It's a very different philosophy. It's very different experience sets that make you successful. And so you have to think about, okay, well, who do I want to spend my time with that's really going to help me get to that next level? You might have seen, there's a quote that talks about elevation requires separation. And so sometimes you have to separate yourself from those people that are not going to help you get to that next level.
Man, that's so important. I can't love that enough. And even relating it always to football in the book, Move the Ball. Yeah, you even go into mention in there at times it was people you love dearly. I think you mentioned your mom on a couple of occasions is like, honey, don't leave this amazing, incredible job or career that you've built and go out on your own. And she means well, and you have to weigh that in the balance. But they may be, and you see this, Jen, right, in championship type environments in football or really any sport. That's why some teams seem to rise to the occasion and win the Lombardi, and other teams just don't, because they may have too many of those people they're not bad people.
Right.
They just don't have that mindset of going after something and chasing it.
And just to come back to football and how that ties to life, sometimes the people that you've had have certain skill sets, but they're not the skill sets that you need to get to that next level. So, players get traded all the time. It's not because they're bad people. It's just, they're just not the best fit. And so you have to look at that from a personal standpoint, from a business standpoint as well. Are the people around me the best fit for what I'm trying to do now? And if not, then you have to make those changes. That doesn't mean you get rid of them from your life completely, unless they're so negative or toxic, like we talked about, but you just kind of have to shift them and put them in a different position.
Yeah, well said. We've seen that to some degree. We're constantly going back to the football, of course. That we saw that a little bit with Cam Newton in the last couple of weeks. Here's a guy who's a former MVP, but the Patriots decided to part ways for the time being to go with a rookie quarterback, somebody that was grasping the playbook a little bit better. And Cam is a big personality. Mm-hmm. And to have him in that locker, he's come out and said on his own show, that, hey, they got rid of me because I'm a big personality. I'm gonna be a big shadow over Mac Jones. So, yeah, you really see how that can relate in a corporate America environment or any small business or entrepreneurial environment as well. Really well said. So, my question for you, and this is kind of a selfish question too, is why do you're someone who's literally left this wildly successful careers with some of the largest companies in our country and really the world. Why do you think more people don't do that? Why do you think more people don't go for it? Or maybe the best question is, why did you go for it? We can be
Yeah.
inspired by you.
There you go. Well, I mean, everybody has their own level of risk tolerance, right? So it's not going to be for everybody. It's also not going to be the right situation. There's a time and place for everything. So there's not always going to be the right time to go. So just because today might not be the right time, that doesn't mean it's not 2 years from now, right? So I just want people to be thinking about, if I am interested in venturing out and doing something different, when can I make that happen? Like, for example, I mentioned, I have 5 kids. You mentioned, we talked about that I have 5 kids. It was a big deal for me to step out being a single parent and leave that. And I can share why I did as well. But not everybody is okay with, I have a 4-year-old and I have an 11-year-old at home. Maybe that's not the right time for everybody. Maybe when your kids are older. So, I think people have to just assess, and I talk about in the book, looking at your goals and figuring out the timing of them. But I think too often people punt because of not valid excuses, but fear. Right? Like people that don't have kids that, you can easily scale back your expenditures and live like a college student on ramen noodles or whatever, and really go after what it is that you want. But, I think a lot of people allow fear to get in their way. And it's not just the fear of uncertainty. It's the fear of judgment. I talk about this a lot because I feel like so many people are afraid of what other people will say, instead of just focusing on, okay, I have a vision, I have a goal, this is what I want to do, so let me go after it. And not everybody, some people love being in corporate, and that's your thing too. So not everybody has to leave, right? But if you're thinking about it, or if you've been holding yourself back, I would really encourage you to think about, well, why am I holding myself back? Is it because my family circumstances mean it's not the right time? Or am I too afraid to put myself out there? And I talk a lot about trusting the process, trusting the journey. And so are you just afraid to not take that leap of faith and kind of see, what happens? And you have to be smart about it too. It's not like you can be like, okay, I'm going to go out. I heard Jen say, I need to get over my fear. So let me just go and see what happens. No, you need to have a plan. You need to have your team. You need to, figure out what it is that you're looking to do, but you can't let that fear get in the way of trying it, I guess it was, like I said, it was the hardest thing for me to leave. But now that I've been gone for almost 2 years, it has been a phenomenal journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Man, it's so inspiring. Yeah, even personally, because I'm in that spot. This isn't about me, but in that spot myself professionally, where I really want to go for something else. And I think that's a great message and move the ball, and one that resonates throughout every page. Take a shot. We see it in the NFL all the time, free agents and guys that weren't undrafted guys making it. And it's because they went for it. They just went for it. And there's no downside to that. Even if perhaps it doesn't work out the way you had envisioned, it's still a journey that's taking you somewhere. So really good stuff. A couple of big questions I want to bounce off you, is particularly with your background and experience, and a pet question of mine, even professionally with people I talk to. Do you think, in your mind, based on what you've seen, public sector, private sector, the game, that leadership can be learned? Or do you think leaders are born?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I do think you have some people that are born. Like, I do think you have people that are born leaders that know how to do it, that don't necessarily need to have training. They just excel at it naturally. That being said, I do think that you can also train people to be good leaders. Now, does that mean that they had to have some leadership genes in them already that just needed to be nurtured? Perhaps, but I guess for me, it'll be like I'm kind of in the middle with it. I don't think that all great leaders are born that way. I don't think that, all great leaders are trained to be great leaders. I think there's a combination. Some people just know how to do it, and others, with some great coaching and help, they can be great leaders.
Very nice. Very nice.
Maybe that's a conservative answer, but I think that I do truly believe that, though.
No, I think it's great. I actually got a little bit of that messaging in the pages of Move the Ball too. And I tend to agree with it. It's really hard to color people into one corner or the other, right? Because you can see people who go through tremendous adversity. I think, again, of my mom, single mothers are near and dear to my heart, who people just don't understand what a day looks like in their life. And they come out on the other side a new and resilient person, and So I think leadership can be learned, but we do, to your point, we do tend to see some people are born into that. I mean, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, some of these guys that you could just see make everyone around them rise. And I think that's a fascinating quality to explore. So I wanted to get your take on that. Now, you work with a lot of NFL players and coaches. Move the Ball podcast. Please, folks, go listen. What is the one quality you seem to see in all of these men or women that make them different? Is there one that jumps out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it's that you're always looking at how they can be better. And in the book, I talk about, this continual improvement. It's not even Tom Brady. He's not like, okay, I'm the greatest quarterback. I can just sit easy. I mean, it's always, how can I be better? It's not just the work ethic of showing up early and staying late, but it's also about focusing on the little things that they need to improve upon. It's not just big changes that make a difference. It's the little things that are going to improve your performance. And that's whether you're an athlete or just a regular individual in life. It's not always big changes. Small shifts make huge improvements or huge differences as well. And I think that, the work ethic plus the how can I always get better, no matter what the stats say already or how great you're performing, it's not being complacent, right? It's still thinking, okay, 1% better, and not focusing on other people, just staying locked in on, okay, how can I improve? And I think it's a little bit different in the NFL. As you know, I mean, these guys are competing for their job every single day. Too. I mean, maybe not Tom Brady every single day, but you know what I mean? Like but a lot of the guys that are not the superstars know that if I don't perform, that I could be gone tomorrow. I mean, the NFL is a tough business, just like any professional sport, not just NFL. And so it's always looking at it's their job to perform well. So they're always looking at how can I take my performance to that next level.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You almost can't talk about football today without bringing out TB12, but his whole workout regimen, his diet, all of that has become infamous, right? That attention to detail and what he's doing to be at 44 years old, still blowing my mind on the football field. So yeah, good. Very, very nice. So, okay. I want to wrap up by getting what it means to you. And I absolutely love this whole motto, this whole phrasing: suit up, show up, and move the ball. What does that mean, Jen? What do we take away from that?
Yeah, so I end all my podcasts, I always say, until next time, make sure you suit up, you show up, and you move the ball. And it's really about suiting up with the right mentality. So getting, in the right headspace, being prepared for whatever it is that you need to do each day, showing up, meaning that you own every day. So you show up to each day fully present and ready to win the day. And when you suit up and you show up the right way, then you should move the ball. And so that's what, Move the Ball, the book, was all about: how you take football and apply it to be successful in all areas of life. But what Move the Ball, the movement and the brand, has become is it's all about how can I move the ball today? Whether you know anything about football or not, it's not really, it doesn't matter. Anybody can grasp the concept of moving a ball forward. And so I've really been, over the last few years, trying to just get people to think about, how am I going to move the ball today, right? You don't have to think about any football terms, and there's actually a lot of people that don't even know football that listen to the show, which I think is fantastic because that's not what I envisioned that would happen. So it's been great. And, I think also, no matter what happens each day, when you suit up with that right mindset, you're ready to take on any challenge, because we all have days that things don't go our way, right? And so when you remain committed to showing up throughout the day the way you need to, you're going to make things happen no matter what. Whatever adversity hits you, whatever unexpected outcomes or negative outcomes, you just shake those off and you keep going. And if I can share two quick stories with
please.
you.
Yeah.
So one I'll share first, because I wanted to talk about why I left my corporate job. It's not in the book because it didn't happen until later. And so
would love to hear that.
And I hope this inspires people listening. So I was always a corporate ladder climbing person. My goal was to be a Fortune 500 CEO. Didn't think I would ever venture out to be an entrepreneur. Loved my life. It was great. November 2016, I got a phone call that changed everything. I was living in Grand Rapids. The phone rings. I look at my cell phone. It was my mom calling. I chose not to answer. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm too busy. I'll call her back later. That was the phone call. She was calling to let me know my dad had passed away. Very unexpectedly. My dad was 78, wasn't sick, nothing. He basically told my mom that he was feeling great that morning. He was going to take a nap. Not uncommon for him. So an hour later, my mom is cooking and his cell phone rings. He doesn't answer. She goes and checks. My dad had passed already. I mean, it was that quick. And so what that event taught me was that two things. One, well, it always bothered me that I was too busy to answer the phone. So what this thing taught me was, one, you really are replaceable in corporate. And two, the world keeps moving whether you're in it or not. And so I really started thinking about, well, what is it that I'm too busy doing that I couldn't answer that phone call, right? And so I really started thinking about my purpose. And like I said, I loved what I was doing. It was great, built this resume. But I realized, like, who cares? What difference does it make when I go? No one else is going to care. So I thought, well, what is it that I could do to really, what's my legacy going to be? What do I want to leave behind? And I had published the book, and people had started putting on social media. They'd share their story. They did something, and they'd be like, I moved the ball today. And they'd hashtag move the ball. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the thing? And I was like, this is the thing people are getting behind. And so I was like, this is my thing, right? This is the thing I'm going to leave behind. And so I told myself that I was going to one day leave my corporate job behind and build this move the ball movement. And so I ended up getting ready, shifted my circle, right? So got teammates that were entrepreneurs. So, I mean, I have a law degree, I have an MBA, worked in Fortune 50 companies. So I was like, conceptual, I'm like, I could do this, but I still wanted to have the right people around me. So shifted the circle. And then on November 5th, 2019, which would have been my dad's birthday, I left. Hardest decision to leave and walk away from a great paying corporate job, but it was the best decision. I don't know if it was the best decision I've ever made. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I mean, it's been an incredible journey. And so I share that because I really want people to think about what is it that you're doing, and are you living your life's purpose? As cliche as that sounds, but I mean, I really do think it's been an incredible ride the last 2 years, even going through COVID and the uncertainties of that. But I mean, I really am in my purpose now. And so they say that when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I mean, it's so true. Not that I didn't enjoy what I did before, but it's a different level. So I hope that people really think about, are you living a life that you're really excited about? And if not, maybe you need to rethink, kind of what your path is. So that's one story. The other story that I would share real quickly is, no matter whatever it is you do in life, you're going to have adversity. You're going to have people that tell you no. Right. And so your decision, you have a choice to make. We have choices every day. And your choice that you make is, are you going to let those people get in your head that tell you no, or are you going to keep doing whatever it is you're doing? And so, as you can imagine, being a woman in football, that's not an easy road. And I remember years ago, probably 2017, I was connecting with people. I mean, there's been so many people when I first started out that nobody cared about this book, right? There are a lot of people in corporate that did, because I had a corporate background, but nobody in football. There were not people that were like, oh, Jen, oh my God, tell me more, right? No, there were no former players that were super excited to learn what I had to say. But I just kept connecting. And I even had an interaction with a woman whose family had owned an NFL team. And I thought, oh, this is the connection, right? And it was such a disappointing conversation because I had such expectations for it. And she basically said, I think you're wasting your time. None of these guys care about what you have to say. If I were you, I would go focus on corporate. And I remember thinking, like, what happened to, like, girls can do anything, right? Like, yeah, you go, girl. And so you have a choice when people say things, and when there are events that make you feel that way, you can choose to listen, or you can say, okay, I'm going to keep doing me, right? And so I just kept connecting, and players started to listen. And, guys that had won Super Bowls started to listen. Guys that had won national championships, college national championships, started to listen. And, but I share that story because, like, when I look at the amount of people that have gotten behind athletes that have gotten behind the podcast and what I've been doing with the brand, I never, ever, ever would have thought it would have become this big or the way it is. But it's because I kept doing my thing and being persistent, being stubborn, right? But not listening to the naysayers along the way. And that's the message that I really want to hit home. No matter what it is you're trying to do, it doesn't matter if it's never done before or if it's a hard road. If it's something you want to do, then just figure out what you need to do and then keep at it.
Yeah, Jen, those are two fantastic stories.
Thank you.
And I'm definitely talking selfishly as this podcaster goes. Those are very inspiring, and you are doing amazing things. I found you by pure happenstance, listened to your great interviews with the ex-offensive line coach of the Rams, with Mike Ditka, and to see that you stuck to it, Aaron Cromer, and
Yes.
stuck to it and went to where you're at is super inspiring. Thank you. And it's absolutely wonderful to see that your father continues to inspire you.
Thank you.
And your mother. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing those stories. They're amazing. And folks, pick up this book, Move the Ball, because it really does bring that to life in really good practical terms. Great stories, Jen. We'd like to finish each podcast by having a little bit of fun so we can learn a little bit about you as a person and a football fan. Obviously, we have what we call a 2-minute drill. And interestingly enough, so do you.
Yes, I do. Yes.
I almost fell out of my chair the first time I was introduced to your podcast. I went, oh my goodness. Well, I guess I'm not original. Jen beat me to it. But we're going to stick with it with you too. So we like to have some fun questions. So I've got a couple of 2-minute drill questions I want to run by you.
All
and
right.
let's test your football prowess here, folks. So rank them, Chicago Bears fan. Man, these are tough. These first two are tough. Walter Payton, Gale Sayers, or Matt Forte? Oh,
I'm ranking all three of them or just picking one?
I rank them. The big thing with the kids now, right, is start, bench, cut. I can't ask you to do that. I'll just say, who's your favorite? It could be a matter of the heart.
I'm going to say, well, Walter Payton is my favorite. I mean, just because of who he is and what he represented both on and off the field.
Oh, man, I love Sweetness. This kid grew up on Sweetness, so
yes.
Absolutely love him. And great choice. That's not to take anything away from Gale Sayers, Matt Forte, Neil Anderson.
Neil Anderson, oh my gosh, yes.
The Bears have had some great backs. You have been really blessed there. Okay, this one gets tough. This is tough. Rank them. Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, Brian Urlacher. Oh, man.
Yes, I'm actually Mike Singletary is going to be my number one of those just because, I grew up as a Bears fan, 85 Bears, great time. And then I'm actually I would go with Urlacher and then Butkus. Not to take anything away from Dick Butkus. I mean, both he and Urlacher, both, 8-time Pro Bowlers, 9-time Pro Bowlers. But I never watched Dick Butkus play live. So, Urlacher, he just had such heart and soul and just gave it everything he had. So he would be my second of those three, and then Dick Butkus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Dick Butkus was at our game the other night. He did not look happy. He did not look happy. The camera caught him. He did not look happy. He still loves his Bears. I mean, really good. You talk in the book about nutrition. What's for breakfast in your world? Do you have a go-to?
I'm very big on high protein. So I actually will have these high protein yogurts, or I'll drink a protein shake. There's a brand, it's called Siggi, Siggi. It's like 19 grams of protein, just a couple grams of sugar. So they don't taste the greatest. I mean, they're not unbearable, but it's an acquired taste, but I do it for the protein.
I love it. I'm familiar with that brand. Yeah. High protein diet. Get the day started right, folks. And read that chapter in the book. It's brief, but it gets right to the point. It's got a little box in there that help you choose how to pick breakfast. Okay. You can pick one player to work with or interview for Move the Ball. Who is it?
Najee Harris.
Oh, wow. Alabama.
Well, yeah, so Alabama, but Najee is just incredible. Not only is he incredible on the field, he's an incredible human being. And so he is my number one. And my goal is to try to get Najee on the podcast for season 3 next year.
Oh, I love it. Chase it. Yeah. Near and dear to my heart with him too. He's from the Bay Area. I grew up in
Yes.
Marin County. He grew up just across the Richmond Bridge in Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
was homeless. I know you know
Yep.
the story. That's
Mm-hmm.
why you're inspired by him. Folks, pick up on Najee Harris's story and what he's doing for people today. It's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dome or grass?
I'm gonna go with dome. I know you prefer grass, but I'm actually gonna go with
Yeah.
dome.
Oh, look at us disagreeing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's a dome. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. What is your superpower? If you're a Marvel character, what's your superpower?
Oh, Marvel. Oh, I was actually thinking like
Or any
anything could be my
superhero?
superpower. Oh, I was going to
Yes,
go
it
with
can.
something completely different, not tied to any of those.
Go with yours.
So mine was going to be my ability to build relationships with people, because I think that is so important to being able to be successful in life, is the relationships you carry with other people. And that's really what's
Oh,
helped
I
me with
love it.
sports, is just building genuine, authentic relationships.
That's awesome. And by the way, that's what superheroes do too. I mean, if you've seen any of those movies, haven't seen many of them, but they're all friends. Come on, folks, it
Yeah,
works.
there you go. There you
Okay.
go.
And then just finally, and this has been longer than 2 minutes, but just finally, you, with all your background and all your experience, if you had to sit down with a head coach, let's say it's Nick Saban, let's throw it out to the Alabama
Oh,
girl.
my.
What's the one piece of advice you'd give him if he asked? Let's pretend he asked.
It's a great quote. Well, I'm going to go with this. I don't know if Nick would really care about this answer, but when I thought about this question, it was make sure your players are good mentally, because I think mental health is so important. Mental health does impact performance on the field, but it's just so important to just being a good human being in life, is making sure that your people are good around you mentally. And we've seen a lot of push for mental health awareness lately. And so that's something that's big for me as well. I talk about in the book about some of the mental health issues that my son dealt with. My son also almost died in February because of mental health challenges. So so I would say make sure your players are good. To any head coach, make sure your players are good mentally, because you just never know.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. Yeah. And for our young people, please know you're valued. Yeah, that's a really good advice. And it's good. And you see Nick Saban turns out a lot of really good young men. He doesn't seem to have some of the problems that you see at other programs. So great stuff. Jen, thank you so much. Folks, if you have not done so, please pick up Move the Ball. What a fantastic book. Some great, very practical pieces of advice for all of us that really leverages a sport that so many of us really love, obviously, here at our podcast. What's the best way to follow you, Jen? If we want to get in touch, learn more about you, what's the best way to learn?
Yeah, if you just type Move the Ball in Google, you'll find me on all platforms. So somehow my search engine optimization, so I don't even do any of that, but it's working. So if you just type Move the Ball, you should see me. Or if you go to movetheballpodcast.com, all of my podcast episodes are there. You know, you've mentioned a couple of people that we had on, Coach Aaron Cromer, who was with the Rams, Coach Ditka, also about to release an episode with Coach Bill Cartwright, or former head coach of the Bulls. So I'm pretty excited about that, being from Chicago. But there's been so many great guests on the show, and their stories have just been amazing. So I encourage anyone that is interested, go check them out.
I love it. And folks, she's on all the social medias. Just look for Move the Ball. Look for the Move the Ball podcast. Great website, getinsidethehuddle.com. You can learn all about Jen and some of the daily tips, the branding tips, and some of the tips that just make you better each day. Jennifer Garrett, thank you so much for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on today.
And we will see you soon. Folks, follow us at gridironicon.com for more great content with folks like Jen, and we will see you soon.